Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show, Blue Collar Mystics. I'm super excited to have Cubs on the show today. We've been talking a little bit, and I'm so excited to continue the conversation. Just a really quick shout out. I want to thank my friends at Content Safe for distributing this podcast and all our others all over the deepest reaches of the internet, where people can troll us and say mean things and do whatever they want. We don't care. We'll take any press, really any press is good press as far as we're concerned. And yeah, go ahead and get yourself a free Blueprint to Happiness guide. We have that as well as an 8-day course on mentalism. We may talk a little bit about that even in the show. But just wanted to go ahead and welcome you to the show, Cubs. It's a real honor. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, man. That I love that intro. It's kind of surreal because I listened to this podcast, before I reached out, and now I'm hearing it on the other side. Very cool, very chippy.
It's all surreal. That's the thing about life is like you peel the onion back and it seems to just get weirder and weirder and weirder.
Yeah, and the less it makes sense, the more it comes together too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anybody who tells you they know what they're talking about, I would immediately disqualify everything they have to say after that.
I know, but it's so funny, dude. I'm such a fucking rascal because every time I have a new level of awakening, I'm like, oh, I fucking know now.
Now I get it. Yeah, it's so funny. One of the things that happens to me, and I think a lot of other people, is something will happen and I'll be like, oh, well, now I understand why, right? Like I contextualize it. I tell my story, and then something else happens, that was completely unpredictable and unforeseen. And then I have to go back to the drawing board and admit that maybe this doesn't quite fit the way that I thought it did. Like the mystery is just constant. It just keeps unraveling and unfolding. But I mean, if we were able to predict it and if it was that easy, then I think it would get boring really fast.
Yeah, man. It's like the whole, the Lakota spirit, Wankan Thonka. It's the great mystery. And, I've been fortunate enough to behold that mystery only once, and it is ineffable and baffable, and it's just, yeah. So I would rather have the onion peel slowly back layer over layer over a long period of time.
Really beautiful though, and I feel like I've gotten a glimpse of that as well, and it's still, like you said, I think the choice of words is just spot on as far as ineffable, right? Like I can't describe this, but to be able to glimpse upon it or have a moment of clarity, we could say, or what have you. Would you be interested in unpacking that a little bit?
Yeah. I'm trying to see where a good place to start with that would be. So I'm a music artist, and I have been very successful, not very successful, the whole gamut. Good times and bad times. But I found myself right at the beginning of my Saturn return or whatever. I was 27. I was addicted to pills. I was left by the girl I was going to marry the day we were moving into a house together. She left me for someone at work. And I was so dependent on drugs, I guess. I was like a high functioning addict at the height of my success. And so the universe Great Spirit put me in timeout, and I was, because, I wasn't supposed to be part of the 27 club, my life wasn't supposed to be a cautionary tragic tale, and I was writing it that way. So, um, like I found myself in this like state of complete grief and despondency, and I was completely shut off from my senses. And I found Pachamama. I found the healing plant ayahuasca, and that really kind of propelled me into this deeper journey that I had kind of been calling in for the last, better part of a decade or so, maybe 8 years. Went through the pandemic and stuff, but I really wanted to talk about this pivotal moment. I don't know what brought it on, but I was beginning to relapse when I moved back down to LA for the pandemic. Probably because I was in LA. I was like, oh, my dealer lives here. And, like you pass the old street signs where you used to, go pick up and stuff. And I was restarting my career and feeling very insecure about myself. And so I'll just touch on the addiction thing really quickly. When you're a music artist, your entire heart and soul is subject to the judgments, opinions, and the values of everyone around you. The record labels get to decide if they want to change your life and give you $1.5 million signing deal and put in money towards you, put you on fucking Selena Gomez tours or whatever, like they have that power to do that. You don't. We could talk about manifesting all day, but it just is what it is. You put out the music and people still have to love it. Even if you put out music coming from like, talking about bitches and hoes, like people still have to love it. It doesn't have to be this higher thing where you're following a path. Like you are not in control like you think you are. And so a lot of artists crave that sense of control in their external environment. And so they control the way they feel on the inside. So that's really why I relapsed, because I was starting my career back and I was like, I don't fucking know. I used to be hot. I don't, and right as I started doing that, man, the universe got real shaky, flat tires, dinging up my car. The money I just took out of my account to go give my dealer, it fell in a storm drain on the way out from 7-Eleven, like very clear signs. And I'm just like, shut up. And, and then my girlfriend came to me and said, I want to try this medicine. It's called Bufo. And and she's like, the shaman says it's best if we do it together. And I was like, cool, yeah, I've done ayahuasca and stuff. I could use a tune-up. But this was not a tune-up. This disassembled the entire engine and basically scrapped the car for parts. And it completely changed everything for me, man. It lifted the veil. I had a violent ego death, and I was clinging to everything I thought I ever was. And I had what they call the it experience. A lot of people take this medicine and they have amnesia, or they go softly into the dark night and they are absorbed in light and God consciousness. But I was stripped of my being as I was, I'm sure, flailing on the floor with this shaman's help. And I saw God. And I saw the representation of God in my mind. And I shouldn't even say I saw, because I was not I. There was no one home to experience this. Well, there was at first. That part fucking sucked. But it fucking sucked, dude. But there I was in the cosmic womb of the universe, the nexus of creation, and the only thing I was beholding the awe and the mystery of Great Spirit, of the design, of every centimeter of the fabric of the scarf that the hawk or whatever flies over the mountaintop, and whatever you want to say about karma or past lives, I saw all of them, and I was everyone at once. And I realized that I'm on a podcast with you right now, but in some other thread of reality, I'm you experiencing me, and we have to do this forever. And the joy and the love in that, and I was completely consumed by it. And I don't know how long I was in this beautiful place of ineffable color, sacred geometric infinity. I couldn't tell you how long I was there, but all I can say is that I did not come back. I didn't leave that year as the same man that walked into it. And I don't know what that means for my future, and I don't know what that means about all the things I believed in, all the Abraham Hicks vision board shit that like I thought was the key or whatever. Like nothing makes sense now, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be.
So it kind of scrambled your sense of certainty then, you would say, in
Yeah.
that sense. Okay.
I mean, on an intellectual level, yeah. But I also know now that my fate is my fate. And since there is no time and I truly exist outside of time, my beginning and end has already happened. Mm. It's not written, but I'm already dead. So it already happened. I'm already on to the next life. And I do need to be a little bit more of a passenger. And I need to be okay with not being in control and not knowing and not being able to intellectualize spirituality and God with, scientific and mathematic modalities mixed with new age woo-woo-isms.
Sure.
But yeah, it for sure scrambled me. But I also came out of this experience knowing exactly what resonated, knowing if I want success, I have to do it from this place. Everything that I am is an unhealed or a healed version of what I'm supposed to be. So if I want to get to where I'm supposed to be, I have to heal this, I have to heal that. These lessons keep showing up for a reason. It's a simulation, it's a video game, it's all of those things, all of the little cool theories that I hear on these hundreds of podcasts I listen to. It's all that shit. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's right.
It's just all of those things all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Simultaneously. That's the crazy part.
From where you look at it, yeah.
Yeah, because like you look at like Dolores Cannon stuff, and she starts talking about, she's had all these different people come in and talk about their past lives, and then she thought there was some sort of like progression, like it was linear, but it's not. Like all those past lives, all that stuff, all those quantum et ceteras are all also now, right? Like, so in that sense, we are experiencing time in sort of this linear way, but it doesn't exist really like that. It's all everything all the time.
Yeah.
all Brahman all the time, and
yeah.
It's like an infinite radio. That is so cool. I want to talk a little bit about how that's maybe impacted you creatively, and has that changed your approach as you go in and start to record music again and start to go out and play live music as well?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll change the way I play live music. I'd like to channel more of that Shakti energy that we experience in deep mystic states on stage, because it's beautiful, and I know that I'll be more tapped in if I do that. As far as the writing, though, I did come into the sense that what you speak does become true, and even more so in music. So like, right, like if you're like being funny with your friends and you don't get a parking space and you're like, oh, well, fucking kill myself, like you shouldn't be doing that either. But like, that's a little less consequential than making a song saying that a girl makes you want to die, or relating a woman, how you feel about a love in your life to drugs. Like these are higher concepts that you're pulling in from the ether, and you're constructing them to tell a narrative about. You're basically like ordering from the waiter, I want more heartbreak and I want more drugs. So it's great. It's great for introspective music to go into your past and your trauma and stuff, but I'm much more careful about speaking on the things I do not want. And I looked back and I was like, that's pretty much all I did. I just talked about heartbreak, or, like, you fucked my life up, and, like, you get me high, baby, kind of shit. And it's like, ugh.
There's something that's very relatable to that type of content, because we've all experienced heartbreak, we've all put our faith in other people, been let down, so that experience is very human. But I also have had a little bit of insight, and I've had to rethink sort of the way I approach things creatively because, well, let's say for instance, you find something that's funny if you're a stand-up comedian and it's like, oh, it's funny to talk about going to jail or as an example. But it's
Right.
like, do you want to go on stage and talk about going to jail every single night? Is that
Hmm.
something that you really want to talk about, or people in jail or whatever, right? Like, because you are like that repetition, because you're putting it out there too. Like, we could talk about it from like the ritual sense. Like talk
Yes.
about these like old egregores that people create, magically, and then every time they do a ritual, it just strengthens, whatever that thought form is over and over and over again. And so if we put it on a piece of tape and send it out there, I think it's kind of the same thing too, right? Like you can make the argument that Tupac or many of these artists that would talk about, or even John Lennon, would talk about some of these things like being shot, and then boom, he's shot in Central Park.
Woo.
That's pretty wild, putting that in there. And I think it does, like from an emotional perspective, like you were saying, it carries a lot of weight with music because there's so much, energy that's behind whatever that is,
Yeah.
whatever it is that you're, singing about, talking about. And that emotion, I think, is really the thing that touches spirit or creates this power or energy in the universe.
Yeah.
So I've had to be a little bit more picky, about like,
Yeah. No, I mean, we do because, like, especially in a creative sense, right? Because God is creation, like that's all it is, and that's the closest experience we can have to godliness besides separating from our ego, right? Is to be in the flow state of creation. So we're fucking spell casting, man. Like now I sit in the shower. I know this isn't a lot of money, but now I'm just like 260,000, 260,000, 260,000, because that's like the next level of money I think I deserve right now, or that I can believe in.
sure.
And so, like, that is kind of like the old framework of manifestation, um, but it has to count for something because, when we're pulling in from the ether, the Greeks used to call it what they called the genius or something, like the whisper coming from the wall.
Wow.
Like, it's a great song idea or inspiration is not from within you. And I know that's hack to say at this point. Every fucking songwriter comes on a podcast and says that shit, but like, it really is. And you're a portal at all times. And so what are you bringing in from the other side? And, a lot of times, like, because I've conditioned my portal that way, like, I'll go to write a song and it's like saying some fucking dark, edgy shit. And I'm like, okay, no, that's cool. But, like, I just need to keep an eye on this because this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I'm becoming deeply, deeply more and more spiritual every year that goes by. I'm getting, I'm growing in that sense because I've intended to. So, like, how long can you keep that up when you know that the truth is you get what you ask for?
Right. When I first started kind of doing comedy, it really messed me up because a part of me thought like I can't be honest, and so I think there's a balance here, which we could definitely talk about a little bit. I think that might be helpful because it's like it's not that I can't, talk about something that's net because comedy is very much what is wrong with the world, if you will, like picking out
Yeah,
things
I
that are
love
funny
it.
that are like, why is it like that? Like, why are we like perfectly divine consciousness all wrapped up in a meat suit with a butthole? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
of all the things, and so like we have to be able to be honest and be able to call a spade and talk about the phenomenon and the experience of being human, while at the same because like for me my tendency probably would have been to go like so toxically positive that I'm like I can't have a negative thought, I can't think anything bad,
I
I
know.
can't write anything bad, is terrible. But like
Yeah.
talking about it and the struggle I think is really empowering, and then understanding that there are two sides to it, and approaching it in a way that's healthy, that's acknowledging and confronting whatever that thing is and being honest about it and owning it versus just saying a bunch of positive stuff so that, hopefully it goes away. Meanwhile, you're just shoving it deeper into the psychic basement and there's a monster that's just like becoming, that's accumulating behind your back that's just can't wait to pop out at the
Mhm.
worst possible time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I had to face that monster too, man, with especially with ayahuasca, it's a little easier to kind of circumvent that shit and, you know, but with that medicine I took, like that whole horrible experience in the beginning, that was all the attachments. That was all of the unresolved shit, all the paranoia. I was like, you know, in my mind I was like, "Oh, these people are trying to kill me. My girlfriend plotted to fucking kill me in this moment." Because I was dying. My ego was dying. Your ego is literally what you are 90% and your body's 10, like you know. And so I had to go through like how I've mistreated myself, how I've wasted opportunities, and all of this shit that I constantly just bypass came up at once, and it was fucking horrifying. It was a monster in the psychic basement, dude. You know. And then once that came up, the only thing left, once ego was put to the side, the only thing there was God, and that's fucking everything. And like talk about like waking up, like it is, it's like going home,
mm.
you know. And then you come back in your body, and you're like, no, wait.
I don't want to be here anymore. And, you know, for me, myself, I was so sensitive too for months and months and months after. Like I would be exposed to like you know, like a dark joke or something, and it would just like on the inside. And it took me a little while to just kind of get, you know, more, I don't know how to say it, but like more involved in a typical way with the world, while still kind of keeping that sacred experience, you know, within me and in the back of my mind and stuff. But then I can laugh at like a, you know, a dark joke or something like that and not feel
Yeah,
like there's going to be some immediate manifestation as a result of it.
I know.
Because
But my question is, if that's what you believe, I mean, if you had just taken the medicine and you were sensitive, weren't you closer to God at the medicine? So maybe you did have a reason to fear a dark joke, and the world, it did just kind of grind you back, desensitized you back into being asleep and taking in the wrong things. I don't know, you
yeah.
know?
No, I think there is an element to that, right? Like Carlos Castaneda would call it our assemblage point. It's kind of like on our body somewhere, you know, there's this, you know, basically like a phantom sort of leverage point. And that's kind of
Yeah,
how we experience and how we absorb information. Some of us are able to tap into other areas, right? Like, because there's infinite. So some of us are tapping into some things, others of us are tapping into others. But based on that and the pliability of that, you know, we can kind of see a larger or smaller range. Like a closed-minded person, their assemblage point would be in a specific place, like it wouldn't move. And I think when we have experiences like what you and I have had in the past, somehow our assemblage point gets shifted, this point of awareness, and things open up to us and we start to see just a different perspective. And so yeah, I think, you know, over time, you know, I just get resensitized sort of to the world, and that thing shifts kind of back into place. But having that open experience, it's now on the radar. It's now
right.
on that sort of map in my
Yeah,
mind. So I know it's there. And so I, instead of feeling like, oh no, like I can't be, you know, like I have to get away from somebody who, because everything is
naughtiness.
right, everything is
Yeah,
still okay. It's just not like when you have that experience, you know, you really, I think, like to me, it was just like, so for me, I think it was an Akashic Records opening. And I felt like I had several questions coming up and floating into my head. Like it felt like every question ever asked was just kind of coming into my mind, rapid fire. Da 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 da. What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? All da 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 da. But the answer to every single question was one resounding word, and that was just love.
I
So
know.
isn't it
I
awesome?
know.
Right? So even the dark, even the twisted, even the person who just refuses and wants to annoy you despite your temperament, you
Yeah,
know, even that is within the all. It really is still part of that same thing. So it has been a little bit of a weird um like adjustment, I guess, to kind of like get all those things back into place. But that fearlessness, I think, is what has resulted for me. So I might be at a comedy show and some dude might make fun of me or say something. Comics can be pretty harsh, right? Like especially
Yeah.
in a competition, you know, they'll say something about your set or or what you look like or whatever, just to try to get a laugh or whatever, and throw you under the bus. And that's funny, right? Like so many things that are just mean. Like
Yeah.
that to me, that's very low hanging fruit. Like if you are just mean at comedy, then yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's not funny. Like look at Always Sunny in Philadelphia. How many seasons have they done? It's just them being shitbags for like however
I
many
love
seasons, right?
it.
And it's a great show. It is funny. I'm not saying that it's not, but that's so easy. You know, it's
Hmm.
easy to just be mean or talk about something that's wrong with somebody. But you also, if you're polarized or sensitized, or if you've been open up to some sort of idea of unconditional love or universal acceptance or something like that, then you feel that cringe and you're like, yeah, I see what you're doing. It's kind of weak, bro. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think it really gives the opportunity and the ability to kind of just rise above it. And that's part of it too, where it's like, yeah, they're going to do that. They're going to pull that low hanging fruit. They're going to do this one thing. Cool. Right. And like learning to be less polarized by it has been something that I think it's been helpful overall. But that place is still within me of, you know, of seeing God or whatever we want to call it, where it was
Yeah.
like I had this experience where I know ultimately it all comes back to one thing, and that is truly unconditional love. And I really believe if there's a purpose for us to be here, it's to experience that in some
Oh
form,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether it's through trauma or, I mean, it's just you're sought in it, man. Like whatever your life path is, like the point is to wake up maybe just once. And for a lot of us, and I'm sure transgenerationally before and all that, like I'm sure that was his death, you know? Like I'm sure it just took dying to have that moment. And that's the best you could hope for in life. But we're very lucky, man. We're in a very fortunate time where we don't have to worry about our next meal or bombs flying down, and we can like start poking around with our gender and like or getting mad about something that happened 300 years ago. Like, you know, which is some of it's kind of silly, not the gender shit, but you know, like the hardcore left swing that we're experiencing, like some of it's kind of wild and silly and this Gen Z stuff, but we're so fortunate to be able to make those fucking problems for ourselves and to ask ourselves these questions. And you know, you got Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly going down to Peru and doing ayahuasca, and then him coming back and doing coke after. Like it's like, okay, we're just doing whatever the fuck we want now, but like you know, like, but it's a beautiful thing, man, and we're very lucky, and I'm super lucky that, you know, one of the greatest resources I had in the recent past was stumbling upon your work or your representation of Vadim Zeland's work, because it was the first framework that I found that, at least from where my assemblage point is right now, it made the most sense. You know?
It made the most sense to me, and that's why I had to share that work because you know previously wasn't available, and I honestly had I wasn't sure, but I felt like I should do it. And then whenever I had the opportunity to connect with you and maybe a few other people as well, when they say, "Man, thank you so much for doing that," or "That really resonated with me," or "I really appreciated that," you know, work, like it makes me know that fuck yeah, like I was following my intuition and that is confirmation for me. So thank,
Totally.
thank you. Yeah. And you know, it's funny because I share that book with a lot of people. I talk about it with a lot of people, and some people, it just is like, dude, there's nothing I can argue with in this book. Like,
Yeah.
this is incredible. And then other
Yeah.
people, they just probably don't read it because I think the truths that are found in that book are also found in tons of other spiritual books. And it's just about a certain language, I guess. And that
Yep.
particular one, man, I don't know what it is, but it just hit me. and tied the room together, you know, to use the Big Lebowski reference. But I mean,
Yeah.
it really did, like from like sort of political philosophy to spiritual philosophy to understanding reality from a scientific point of view. It tied all of those perspectives in together in a way that I thought, wow, this is really healthy. And it's really healthy for me too, the understanding of pendulums and group dynamics and how all that stuff worked, because that was very influential on me and I didn't even know it, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, the pendulum thing, that's what got me the most. And actually, I remember I was reading it and I went in to work with this facilitator with this medicine, and he's incredible. But remember one of the first things he said, he's like, he was going at my chakras and getting visions of stuff and asking me about them. And he's like, why am I seeing pendulums everywhere? And I'm like, I'm reading this book, dude. It's like, because I'm seeing them everywhere. That's why.
Dude,
you know?
Man.
And like one of the biggest pendulums that I've had the hardest fucking time with is TikTok, bro. Because it's, as an artist, they're like, yo, dude, like these 18-year-old kids are getting Grammys and shit off TikTok. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, man. I don't want to lip sync. I don't want to like, you know, like duet with someone. I just don't want to do it. I just want what I want, how I want it. And you know, I was like, I'm divine enough to have that my way.
Yeah,
you know?
I think boundaries, you know, are important in that. And you know, there's times when I've had to rent myself out too, where it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna do this thing, even though I'm not really all that stoked about it. Maybe I'll try it, whatever. But even when I have, you know, like succumbed, I guess, into that pendulum, whatever it is, just knowing that it is that has given me a ton of power so that I don't feel that weight and that pressure to have to conform to it. It's like, okay, dude, I'm entering into your game rules, whatever that is, and I'm going to play by those rules. But I'm like, you know, it's the equivalent of detachment, I guess, in Buddhist or Zen philosophy, where it's like, I'm going to come in, I know there are these rules here. I'm just going to do the rules, but I'm not like putting my emotion kind of back to like music and the power of music, because really that power is coming, you know, it's the vehicle is really that emotion, that power, that like vibration that's behind it, behind that word. And so I think a lot of times when we do have to engage with those pendulums, I think that's why it says at the top of that chapter, rent yourself out, is like sometimes, you know, we're going to be, you know, in a particular situation where we're like, yeah, this isn't really my taste. Okay, cool. I don't have to put all my whole energy into it. I can just play this game for what it is, whatever. And then having the wherewithal to understand exactly your parameters, your boundaries. Like, I'm willing to play this game, but I'm not willing to play that game over there. You know, like I have the same sort of thing with TikTok. It's so toxic to me. Like I can't really engage there. And I've done a few videos and stuff on TikTok, but it's not somewhere where I really want to spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, the people that I'm trying to reach are probably not there. And even if they are, they make it so difficult. You know what I'm saying? To like, connect after the fact. Like, who clicks off a link on TikTok? Like, it like takes over your whole phone. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. And, I mean, for me, man, like I was like, okay, you just have to do it. You have to rent yourself out. And so I was like, okay, well, should I like just like sing into my phone like all these kids are doing? And I'm like, well, I sound better once I'm in a song mixed and it's all tweaked anyways. Like, I'm not really a sing in front of you in a room kind of guy. Like, how should I do this? Should I do like a spiritual angle? And then I was like, oh wait, I know. I'm just gonna fucking make fun of spirituality, because it is like I'm deeply spiritual, but I'm a big dichotomy, because I'm also kind of a shithead and I like fucking making fun of things and like the whole spiritual angle. And so basically, like, I've been doing like shitty meditations and shitty affirmations where, like, you know, I'll go and do a nice affirmation and then my mind starts wandering and I'll get all negative and fucked up. And like, so I found, like, I was like, okay, I don't have to make this thing, I don't have to be in opposition to this pendulum. I also don't have to see this as, I don't have to adhere to it. Because, you know, there's that, chapter 17 that was like, you cannot be the thing the big thing if you are following the rules. You can only be a mockery or, you know, a parody. A parody. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do something natural to me, and like I have a twisted sense of humor, and I'm like kind of nihilistic about shit, and I'm also really spiritual. So I'm just gonna combine that shit, and we'll see how it does. And I was able to turn it from a demon to like my plaything. You know, like
That's
something.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the beauty. And like when you kind of get more into that book, I love to be able to make fun of myself. I also love making fun of spirituality. It's so funny. There's all these things.
Yeah.
There's channelers and,
Yeah.
astrology and like all this woo woo shit. And it deserves to be made fun of.
I know, dude.
Like
Yeah.
when some dude, and I won't
Yeah.
name names, like comes out in a fucking Hawaiian shirt and starts channeling things and telling you how to live your life, and people will just beck to this, and who happens to be Paul Anka's cousin. Then it's funny. It's funny at that point, and it's and even if it's true, right? Like you can
Yeah.
still make fun of it. Like, is God scared of a human's joke or like a knock at him or it, or like, like
Right.
if somebody's a
No.
Christian, there's lots of people who make fun of Jesus or whatever, but like, dude got crucified on a cross. If he's real, like, I don't think he's tripping, on the whole, on a one liner, you know what I mean?
No,
So
dude.
I'm
And that's funny that you brought up the Chandler thing, because I went to this well-known channeler, and am I saying it? Why does that sound weird? Channeler.
I think that's what they're called. I don't
Yeah. Yeah, like it was a big room full of people, and he basically channeled this Native American spirit. And it was really beautiful. He sang a lot of beautiful shit. And he's sitting there in this chair, and he comes to me and he just looks at me, and he's like, he's doing the whole, I'm not going to do the Native American voice, but he went, he was really,
Thank
he
you.
was, I was fucking about to do it. I'm like, wait a minute. You're done, son. So with a lot of pauses in between each word, he said, he was like, do you like video games? And I was like, no. And he's like, why not? And I was like, I don't know, they're fucking lame, dude. Like, get a life, bro. Like, yeah, like. And he's like, have you taken mushrooms? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, then you'd know life is a video game. And he was like, your inability to basically to not condemn and judge everything is what holds you back from like the truth of who you are. And I was like, oh fuck. And I was thinking about it, and I even like started playing Red Dead Redemption after. I'm like, maybe I don't have to be an asshole about video games. And then a couple of weeks later, I just see him on his Instagram. I find him on Instagram, and he's just fucking playing video games all the time. And I was like, wait a minute, did I just get I thought it was like this, this whole other thing. And he's like doing live Twitch streams with people all around the world. And I'm like, oh, okay.
He's just channeling
his own shit. Yeah.
Shit. Yeah, like, he's just pretending, but he's putting it in a voice so as to not get canceled, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, there was truth to it, and it did speak to me. But I just think that the Chandler didn't like that I thought video games were fucking lame. He's ripping me a new one.
Was like, nah.
Yeah.
But no, that's a great example of being able to, incorporate something and take it, because that there is, I know for a fact for me, there's truth to that too, where like those things that I can't, that I feel confronted about or uncomfortable, like those are the things that I need to like lean into often the most, as opposed to like being like, making a sarcastic joke or, just letting it be what it is and pretending like it has no power over me, instead like leaning in, and accepting those different perspectives and ideas, instead of just like shoving them off. It's kind of like when you tell somebody your idea and they immediately shoot it down. It's like that doesn't feel good. Nobody likes that. It's like, I got an idea, and you get all excited, and then you say the thing, and then they just shoot it down, and it's just like, your heart just sinks into your stomach. But being able
Yeah.
to integrate that stuff, and also, like there was a Native American guy I did a sweat lodge with, and he did a whole entire speech right before we went and did the sweat lodge, and he was like, balance is the most important spiritual principle, which Vadim would definitely agree with. He said it's the primary natural law. I was so bored though. I was like, dude, shut up, man. I don't want to hear about balance. Like that's so lame. Like balance, really? That's what you're going to harp on right now? Like for me, it didn't seem like something that I wanted to hear about. But in hindsight, looking back and now sort of seeing, like, how can you integrate something that's funny and true and, and has all these different sides to it. Like Island Day McCusick says, truth has 144 sides.
Wow.
Like on the whole spectrum, every point of perspective is valid. It's experiencing what it's experiencing. It can't be just thrown out. Like every single point, every single person is having their own experience, their own subjective reality tunnel or layer or whatever the word is. So each one of those is valid in its own right. So how can we incorporate that and then also see the contrast and, enjoy it, make fun of it, play with it, and do all those things. And I think with that particular speaker, I think he was Lakota. Yeah, I believe it was. And, like that was really what he was talking about was balance, understanding, what's going on, incorporating it and not being too attached to any perspective, just allowing it to sort of be what it is. And I think that for me has been something that's been really helpful, and I'm continuing to learn from a creative perspective, and just a real life perspective too. But man, that's really, really interesting and well put, because like anything can be useful. And one of the things he says in that reality transurfing book is that you can interpret signs when you hear something distantly or faintly, someone talking at a table and you catch just a few words. When someone sits down and starts giving you direct advice, it's almost never the universe telling you anything. It's just their pure egoic opinion, just trying to pretend like they know. Because as we can all see over the past couple of years, I don't believe anybody knows shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, we used to think, like, oh, these people, and there's wisdom that comes along with living life. That's not what I mean. But as far as like predicting the future or knowing what's going to happen next or any of that, I can't trust anybody's take on that. But when you were talking about chapter 17, it reminded me to think of, the point of this idea of understanding pendulums in the organization of nature, which is basically what that represents energetically, is not to work on behalf of the pendulum and be a parody, but to have the pendulum work sort of on your behalf.
Right.
So to be able to live your experience and push that forward, and then hopefully these things will start supporting you as opposed to you basically serving them. They would serve us, right? Like, so to take YouTube or something, I guess, into an account, it could be that, right? Like, instead of me just being like, well, I'm gonna figure out YouTube and do all this stuff, and like becoming this like sort of, I have to post it this time, and this is the algorithm, and all that dictates. Instead, being like, well, I'm going to do this, and try to leverage these things and see how they sort of work and unfold. And then at that point, I think it can be a little bit easier to manage, our time and attention and how we invest it, and where we invest it. And then, it gets a little bit, it gets a little less hazy, and it gets a little bit more clear. Like, hey, what do I need to be doing? What's my number one sort of use of time? For me, it's writing, whether that's comedy or spirituality or whatever. And that's my sort of daily thing, where if I'm doing this and I'm pushing that ball forward, and then whatever, there will be some new app at some point, who knows what's going to go on with how, Twitter or Facebook or whatever thing, how it develops and evolves. But as long as, I'm staying focused on what I need to do, then hopefully I will be able to find ways to sort of exploit my own work via the organizational structures of pendulums, as opposed to being like, oh no, how can I, how can I have to use this thing and I have to figure out exactly all the things about it. I've never been one of those types of people. I appreciate people who do understand that kind of stuff. Like my friend Jacqueline's a nerd about Instagram and how the algorithm works. And I appreciate that because I can ask her questions about it and she'll tell me.
Right.
But she just does it, I think, more out of her own curiosity and excitement, as opposed to this sort of indentured dependence that kind of happens as a result of the pendulum thing.
So would you say that it'd be most prudent to approach it like this? Like it'd be like, go to and where you're guided based on your own personal calling, in tandem or alongside with the pendulums most closely related to that, without adhering to the rules of the pendulum, so do what you do, write your stuff, submit it to the normal places that you would as part of that structure. But then how do you differentiate yourself from that pendulum? Is it just not getting wrapped up in the minutia of it, or not getting emotionally invested in the outcome? Because, with music, man, well, kind of both our industries, it's entirely, I mean, that's why so many people in the creative scene are spiritual, because we're fucking living on a prayer, man. Yeah. We pray, dude.
We're counting on miracles over here.
I need a miracle once a month at least.
Right. Totally. Well, yeah, I do think so, because one of the examples that I use is if, let's say, Jerry Seinfeld wanted to become a comic and he basically became a Rodney Dangerfield more or less impersonator, right? Because he saw Rodney Dangerfield. He's like, well, that's what comedy is, so I'm going to do that. He could only be as good as a Rodney Dangerfield impersonator. Whereas if Jerry Seinfeld understands himself and who he really is and his own voice, then he becomes this own, sort of thing that gets lit up as a result of that. And it's a very simplistic, example, but I would say yes. I would say yes to both, because it's really easy to kind of get this sort of rebel attitude too, where it's like, I'm not going to conform to anything, Yeah, that's right. It's like, I work on my writing packet, having sketches, a pilot show, those types of things in case of that potentiality for some commercial success. Is that what I'm counting on? No. I would prefer to be in a position of someone sort of like a Ryan Long or Tim Dillon, or, someone who has built their own sort of fan base. And I think you can do both at the same time. I think you can do the things that that the industry, kind of puts out there to do. Like I take acting classes. I do improv work. I'll take an acting class, or I just got back from Toastmasters today, actually. So as conventional as those things are, I don't think that ultimately it hurts to play the game of conventionality, as long as you don't, like he would say, never put all your eggs in one basket and think that that's what's going to drive you forward. Because that might help you, it might guide you, you might get something from that, but it's really about, I think, managing that relationship with the pendulum and saying, okay, well, here's as much as I'm willing to invest. And ideally, if I'm not getting anything back from it, then then the pendulum definitely wins. But if I go to Toastmasters for a year or 2 years, and I take their path, I can't remember what it's called. It's like path work or something. It's like understanding the different angles of speech and like how to use them in a conventional way. Well, if I can use those and leverage them to my benefit, then absolutely I should do that. Like it's not going to hurt me, but at the same time, if I rely on that alone, then I'm basically beholden, and I'm going to become a parody. When I walk up there, I'm going to be this cheesy cookie cutter, cheese dick, who's like going to say the same thing that everybody else says the way that they say it, up to and including inflection and timing. Like those things can all be helpful, But I think as far as like expressing our genuine talent, ability, and potential as who we are, that's not something I don't think that you could really learn or be or have a pendulum basically express that for you. Like you can
Right.
you can use and leverage the power of the pendulum, but that original and authentic voice, there's something that's very sacred about that, and I know that's why he's so adamant about not becoming a parody. I would say there's many paths to the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of us, like stand-up comedy, that is an absolute pendulum, and there are definitely rules and ideas. And like Judy Carter's book, The Comedy Bible, is excellent. She gives you the exact structure of a joke, and you'll notice that Chris Rock and all these other very very successful comics, their jokes do fall right into the structure. Now, do they write it that way where they're like, well, I need to take an attitude
Yeah.
about this? Yeah, probably not. But understanding the rule,
The formula. Yeah.
yeah, understanding the formula, understanding the rule, then you can kind of break it. But I don't think it's something to be beholden to, but I don't think but I also at the same time don't think it will hurt you to learn and to leverage, if that makes sense.
Right. So kind of tying that in with music too, do you think the structure and the formula is a pendulum in itself? Because like with music, the Swedes are the best at it. They call it song math, right? So you have the structure is a verse, a pre-chorus, a chorus, post, and then another verse, and then it repeats to a bridge, and then last chorus usually goes twice or something like that, and in a perfect pop song. And within this structure, you have to pick a melody somewhere in the middle of the chord here if you want it to be catchy, and then you have to stay away from that melody in the next part and then go back to something that mirrors that. And so the Swedes have this, like Max Martin, one of the greatest songwriters of all time, like they stick to this formula so much. And so when I bring this formula to songwriting, the shit gets kind of average, you know, like when you really, it's like doing something knowing people are watching you. It's just never as good as if you know, when you're in the car going off the cuff with yourself or a buddy. But then I look back at my most successful songs that I wrote completely isolated in a bubble, and they all had perfect song math. And I was like, I didn't fucking know. When I wrote them, I was like, these suck. Like, you know, and then they have like 150 million streams and shit, and then you're like, oh, that didn't suck.
Right.
Like, what did I, you know? And so like that, is that just an inherent rule about the structure of a joke and within the framework of our matrix? Same with a song, or is that a pendulum that has created because Elvis did it once and then everyone's fucking trying to do that and it becomes what music is?
I mean, I think it is actually, yeah, I think it's maybe kind of both, but yeah, but I mean, yeah, the you know, the further back it goes and the more it's, you know, hit on those same things, the more sort of power that pendulum has, the more energy, you know, that it's going to carry with it. But I find it really, really cool that, you know, when you look back, you're like, oh, wait, that does actually follow that. But your intention, but it's intention, right? Like ultimately it's intention. It's like, so I'm working on a joke right now about being sapiosexual. And that's, you know, if you don't know what that is, don't worry. I'm not attracted to you. But, but like, you know, a sapiosexual is someone who is attracted to someone who's very smart. And so like my ideal candidate would be someone like Helen Keller. Right. I think she was hot and didn't know it. So like, so that is an example of something that is very, very much a pendulum, right? Like how many Helen Keller jokes are there, right? But the sort of the angle is different, right? Like I'm saying she's pretty and I think she's attractive. She's a published author. She's got an IQ of 160. You know, like there's a lot of reasons for me in that particular perspective to go that route, right? And I think it's funny, I think it's different, right? But it kind of takes that idea and shifts it on its head. But it still follows that rule. It's just a different sort of perspective. And ultimately, I think it's the intention ultimately that really wins. Because I haven't looked into this. I'd be interested to, but I'm sure there are some songs that are still incredible songs that don't quite follow that exact structure or may have a tweak or an inverse, like you know, the format of it is slightly different, or it's instrumental here early, and that's weird that they did that way, or something like
Well,
that.
Post Malone did that, and it worked once, and then he became the guy who does that. And so he switched the structure, and he did the chorus first, and then it was just like 50 seconds of the same fucking pattern and melody, which was basically rapping, but it was so melodic that it became pop. And so that's the thing. It's like, if you're brave enough to break the pendulum and be rewarded for it, then you're it. You know? So like when to discern when to break a pendulum, and where that's coming from, that motive and that intention, you know.
And then you might be beholden to that, right? Like you might become Post Malone in there, and then people expect that certain thing of you at this point, right?
Yeah.
So from a joke writing structure, Ralphie May would say, you want to be the one person who has that take or angle on whatever the joke is. It could be the World Series or ice skating. Right. It doesn't matter. That is so, you know, on point that nobody else even touches that topic again, right? Like they're like, we're not even doing this subject matter. It's like,
it's hack.
Yeah, it's hack now. Like you've made it hack. You
right.
Be like that. You want to be that person. That's sort of his angle. But I love alternative comedy. You know, we could look at Andy Kaufman or many other more abstract type of artists in that field. You know, Stephen Wright or Mitch Hedberg or many of those.
Yeah, Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah, I mean, nobody tells a joke like Mitch Hedberg. Except for open micers, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
That worship Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him because he's hilarious. But yeah, that's an example. But if I were to break down his jokes, they do still fall into that structure, oddly. Right. And I don't know if that's something that was created culturally or if that's just something that's kind of inherently true.
Right.
I think it's maybe a little bit of both somehow, you know, because we did have Elvis, you know, really take the blues and create, you know, this template for taking the blues to, you know, the mainstream and into rock. And, you know, there's something to that, you know, all the Beatles songs or the White Stripes when they came out, you know, I'd play the White Stripes for people when they came out and they'd be like, this really reminds me of the Beatles. I'm like, oh, you don't say, you know?
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, but they were doing it maybe a little bit more tongue in cheek, right? Like they had their angle on it, I guess you could say, but it was still the same exact structure, you know, and Jack White's one that's kind of weird. He establishes rules intentionally and says, you know, I'm only going to have 4 guitars, or, you know, I'm only going to allow this or whatever for this particular album. I doubt he's doing a lot of that anymore. I know he like flipped and he's not even using tape anymore. He's like, oh, fuck it. Nobody cares if I use Pro Tools or not, you know?
We didn't care either.
we never cared before.
You cared, buddy.
That's right. You were the only one.
That was maybe a conversation point in passing. Like, oh, I guess this album was made analog. You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're just wasting resources, man.
Yeah.
You not love the earth? I thought you drove a Tesla, bro.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. No, there's a lot to consider when it comes to this. You know, the guy who's in the background there, that's my bud James. He's got the Sonic Portal, and we met each other as comedians. And so, you know, when I talked to him at first, you know, we were talking about bits and sketches, and he's like, I've got this screenplay. He's just finally put the finishing touches on it. It's excellent. It's excellent.
Hell yeah.
But, you know, that's an example of something that has to follow structure. But also, he's like, dude, I can't have something in my movie that's happened before. You know, I need at least, you know, 4 or 5 original scenes that nobody has ever seen before. It's got to be something unexpected and different and a twist. And I think he's done a great job with that. But then as we like look at it with the left brain, the like logical linear structure of the movie, every single thing has to make sense. If you put anything into a story, like a movie, then if you don't touch back on if there's somebody grabbing a set of keys and they don't lose those keys or put those keys somewhere else later in the movie, then you completely wasted the audience's time. Everything has to be so logically perfectly tied together that without it wouldn't work. And so it becomes one of those sort of balancing acts, I guess, where, you know, on a linear scale, we have to see how it works, and we can take that approach. But from the truly creative side, that feminine right side of the brain, I really think it's about inspiration and just like you said, you know, being in the car and just opening up and just allowing that to be what it is. Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. Are you familiar with it? Oh,
yes.
Man. So like she does a great job with that. She's like, kick the censor out of your brain, you know, the left brain that like antagonizes you while you're writing or creating. Like, let that go and then use that when we come back to it. And I think that kind of is a great way to balance. As Vadim says in the book, when we're creating a piece of art, it goes like a layer at a time. It's like a layer, and then we withdraw, come back, add a layer, withdraw, come back, add a layer. And it lessens that importance as well. And
totally.
Yeah, that's a big sticking point, you know, for people who are interested in transurfing is like, how do I reduce importance? You know, I want this thing so bad. And the biggest thing he would say is take action. You know, one of the things that I've really clung to lately is I have no expectations for anything to happen early. So I have committed to the long game, and I'm gonna say, okay, in 5 years or whatever, will have attained X result, instead of being like trying to put myself in a position that maybe I'm not ready for, honestly. But if I'm beholden to that long game and I know that I'm in it for the long game, then that totally reduces all that importance in the meantime of having to do something great or perfect now. You know, it's like, I don't have to do something great or perfect now. And the other part that I've really started to lean into is the two types of productivity that she differentiates in that book. One being like productivity, which is like, I'm hammering it out, I'm writing, I'm doing this thing, I'm in my cave, and versus high level productivity, which is nurturing. One of the things she says in the book that is very counterintuitive and is definitely a half truth is the more I treat myself like a precious object, the stronger I become. And so understanding that we need to have those experiences in that time, especially as a writer, as a creative. Like, if you don't have experiences to draw from, then it's kind of really not, what are you going to write about? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going to come out? So it's good to have, you know, those things that are out of the ordinary, those experiences. Like, I was a raft guide for years, and now I'm going back out and raft guiding on the weekends.
Right. That's right.
And it's cool because, like, that is very nurturing to my soul. Like, I've found something that really does make me feel good. Like, going to the gym would be fine, and that's good for me to move and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not really that motivated to go to the gym. I don't know if you can tell, but but I'm also not. But I also get so much more out of just being in nature, right? So I'll just be there for 2 days. I'm not there for the money. I'm there for 2 days a week. Take a couple trips, meet some new people. I'm fresh when I'm there. But when I come home, I'm like, all right, dude, I'm ready to get down and start tapping stuff out. And you know, I guess it comes back a little bit, you know, to that idea of balance. But ultimately, it's intention. And I think when your intention's pure, that good stuff is going to come out like it does in the car, in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, at that point, it's just our responsibility to record it, you know?
Yeah, get it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's wild how you know something's going to come in, and you just, like, I've been working at my grandpa's farm before, and I knew a song idea was coming, and I was 2 acres away from pen and paper and didn't have my phone, and I was like, fuck.
Or dreams. Like, I've
Yeah.
had so many dreams where I'm like, oh my God, that's so good, I gotta write that down. And I would be like, I'll never forget this is way too impactful. And then I'll wake up and then I'll sit down and I'll be like, what was that again? I swear it was something.
Dude, all my songs in dreams fucking suck though. But they're so amazing in the dream, and then I'll do like a crusty voice memo of it, at 4 in the morning. I'll listen to it the next day. Because you're in that like the variant space and where that potentiality does fucking rip. But like right here, I'm like, oh my God, dude. Yeah. Yeah, I had a dream recently where I was like, I'm going to sample bass instruments from frog noises, probably from the Toad Medicine. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a song completely out of frogs. And I woke up and I was like, no, the fuck I'm not, dude.
That's so funny. They're
That's
so
so
loud
not
though.
cool.
They definitely have some deep frequencies. They're like the toads around the ponds and stuff, especially around here. Those big bullfrogs and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the Budweiser people maybe got to that first.
Yeah. I tapped into it late. Whatever.
No, man, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Like I'm really empowered and excited, and I want to share, your work. I'll have this podcast coming out. What is the best way people can connect with you, check out your music, and see who you are?
Yeah. So it's spelled CVBZ. It's Cubs. I really shot myself in the dick with that name. I just didn't want people to be like, "Oh, you're a Cubs fan," which would have been better than yeah. But anyways, yeah. So Instagram Cubs Music. Just type in Cubs on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I have a new EP coming out in like 3 weeks on Spotify. It's called the Valle EP, and I have a bunch of music rolling out after that, music videos. So check that out, and also Cubs on TikTok if you want to see some of my TikToxic shit talks.
TikToxic shit talks.
Yeah,
that's beautiful, man. I love that. I love that twist. That's awesome. Well, yeah, man. I'll definitely have that. I'll have all those links for everybody to explore. Go and check it out. I'll put a ton of links in the show notes. I just really appreciate you taking the time, Cubs, to come and chat with me, man. It's been great.
Me too, man. It's wild to meet you because I've like been falling asleep to your voice reading that book for 6 months. So it's surreal. It's really cool. I'm
awesome.
I'm glad we linked up, man. And I can't wait to see you perform your comedy live.
Man, I can't wait. I can't wait to do that too, and to connect. I'm usually out in LA, relatively frequently. I was out there in I think February this year.
Good. Okay. Well, just text me when you are, and we'll get a drink or whatever.
For sure. That sounds great. Well, thank you again so much. Awesome podcast. Everybody, be sure to go check them out. Like I said, all the links are in the show notes. Thanks, everybody. Much love and peace. Love is all there is. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks. Love you, brother. Peace.